Henry Tufnell, 33-year-old MP for Pembrokeshire. You're elected at the last election for Labour.
Yeah.
And reading about you, I reckon you might be the poshest person I've ever interviewed.
Oh, okay.
So your great-granddad was a Conservative MP. Your great-great-granddad was a Conservative MP. You come from a family of Gloucestershire landowners, I read. You went to private school.
Yeah.
Did you ever think of becoming a Conservative MP?
No. No, I didn't.
Did you ever think... When did you know you were Labour?
So I think it's an evolution. So I worked as a lawyer, practiced as a barrister doing healthcare, public and employment law. And I worked, so that was sort of, again, involved in workplace discrimination, that kind of aspect of law, which was obviously has a left-wing bent to it in some aspects in terms of whether you're working for the NHS, working against the NHS. So there's always a sort of political bent to the, well, I suppose there is a political bent to the law. But also I worked for a small grassroots trade union called the Cleaners and Allied Independent Workers Union. So I worked before I went into law as sort of involved in the legal stuff, and then afterwards I worked as a sort of organiser. So that's helping cleaners campaign for better pay and working conditions. It's basically been a sort of a journey type thing that you get involved because you believe in a cause, you think you can make a difference, and then you go out to try and make the difference in reality. Be the change you want to see, I think is the cringe quote that always gets rolled out.
So looking at your family history, when you decide and declare to your family, do you know what, I am a lefty? Do they go, what? We don't have that in our family.
No, so my grandmother was chair of the local Conservative Association and my dad was a Conservative district councillor. So there's always been a sort of political discussion around the dinner table, but I don't think it was ever necessarily party political. It's that you discuss issues that may end up having a party bent depending on where you're coming at. I mean, but all these parties, right, are flexible in their beliefs at certain points in time. And so we've always had those political discussions. And I don't think it was ever sort of, and then after, later on you go, oh, right, I identify with the Labour Party and what they stand for and their values. But I don't think it's something that you start from the point of I am a Labour and then you go on to make the arguments because you're starting from a Labour point of view. You make the arguments because you believe in it, and then it so happens that aligns you to the Labour Party, if that makes sense.
So round that family dinner table, when you decide, come to that conclusion that you are on the left, there's no sort of, oh, so disappointed, son.
No, so ironically, it was my grandmother, who was obviously very involved politically, gave me a biography of Clement Attlee, so sort of later in time. And I think that was like really nice in terms of showing that there was a space for me and my political beliefs and also my background in terms of I can be part of the Labour Party and the Labour movement, knowing that it can be that kind of broad churches accepting of people from different backgrounds, and you don't have to come from a specific background in order to be part of that political party. But that, Clement Attlee believed in all the things that we know him for, the creation of the welfare state, the NHS, all those kind of, well, I would view them as very positive things within British society, and to be able to identify with someone, he came from a fairly, I think it was a family of legal professionals. He was sort of very much middle class known. He went to private school as well. So that there's a place for you within the party, despite your background, maybe. Because I think we often become so polarised, right? We become so polarised in these debates about this identity politics. It's become crazy within the left that you have to, and it becomes almost gratuitous at times. So I think, I don't know, and that's why I think sometimes it may be a bit difficult with some people to think about me in the Labour context. But I think it's about what you do and what you believe in, and that's the most important thing. And
you are not afraid to speak up when you think things aren't right. And in your constituency, a lot of farmers, and you spoke out when Rachel Reeves introduced in her last budget the imposition of an inheritance tax rate of 20% on agricultural property worth more than £1 million. You said that decision cost the trust of farmers. There's a budget coming up next month. Do you think you will see, do you hope to see, what would you like to see to improve the relationship and the deal for farmers? I'm not going to speculate on the budget,
But what I will say is, and I've been very vocal about this, is that there will be a significant impact on Pembrokeshire farmers as a result of this change to the inheritance tax. And I don't agree with the assessment that the Treasury have made about that impact. I've gone and spoken to Pembrokeshire farmers locally. I've collected a lot of data from them, seen their accounts. They've been very, very open about that. And I think the impact on them will be greater than what the Treasury is saying it will be. And that gives me great concern, because agriculture is a huge part of our rural community, rural identity, and it's hugely important to Pembrokeshire as a county. And so me, as their representative in Parliament, I think it's right that I make that case, even if it makes people in my party feel uncomfortable in terms of thinking in terms of loyalty or trust or whatever. I think that you are there to represent your constituents, and you're there to have to be bold and to be brave. And I think that's an important part of being an MP.
And something else which you've taken a cause with is, well, I'll quote some words back at you, actually, your own words. You said, our push for renewables cannot come at the cost of critical jobs in our oil and gas industries. Now, again, that might be uncomfortable for some of the people at the top of government. What needs to change on the net zero mission?
So in Pembrokeshire, we have 20% of the UK's energy comes through the port of Milford Haven. In our heyday in sort of 60s, 70s, we had sort of 4 oil refineries, and we have now 1 oil refinery. I think we lost Merco oil refinery, it shipped off to Pakistan. Now, in that context, the only people that lose are the people in my constituency. We lose the jobs, we lose the skills, we lose the industrial base. And in a county that has 30% child poverty, that matters enormously. And I think what government need to do is to think very hard about the implications for communities like mine, where we don't have a just transition. Oil and gas will be a critical part of our energy mix for many decades to come. It's important that we recognise that, and that we don't take decisions that will completely destabilise and cause real, even more deprivation in terms of poverty in communities like mine. And also it goes to the point about renewables, that we have huge capability with floating offshore wind and other sustainable aviation fuel, hydrogen. The critical thing for us is to maintain that skill base and then allow people to transition into those industries. If you lose that skill base because the oil refinery goes to a place like Pakistan, where potentially they're emitting more carbon than they were in the UK, you will lose that skills base. And that's not going to come back to Pembrokeshire. That will leave, and then you won't have that transition. There will be no transition. There will just be poverty.
The trade unions make a similar point to the one that you've just articulated about those jobs, that they're great jobs that need to be protected. They don't think the government's listening on this. Do you?
I think the government needs to listen more to this argument. It's because it also goes intrinsically to who we are as a party. We're there to represent working people, to fight for working people, to stand side by side with the trade unions. And this is a critical issue for communities like mine. Absolutely critical. And it is, we're seeing it in Grangemouth, Lindsay, like Port Talbot. This is happening across the country, this deindustrialisation. And effectively what we're having is decarbonisation through deindustrialisation. And the devastating impact that is having right across the country on communities like mine is not acceptable.
I'm going to ask you a personal question now, Henry. On the 9th of March 2021, the worst thing imaginable happens to your family. You lose your 22-year-old brother, Carlton, to suicide. No, you haven't spoken about this before. It must be incredibly distressing. What I want to ask you, as someone who has gone through such a painful ordeal, we have a problem in this country, not just this country, with male suicide. It's the biggest killer of men under 50. What do we do? How can we stop this tragic loss of life?
Yeah, it's very difficult to talk about. And I wouldn't wish anyone, any family, to go through the level of pain that me and families like mine have gone through when you lose someone who's an integral part of that family. And like you said, we need to do more to try and address this issue of male suicide. the suicide rates in young men in particular. I think there's an element in society that there's an element of lack of listening. We don't listen to people. When someone's can be very vulnerable, we need to be very careful that we listen. It's not just sort of flake platitudes. It's real listening and trying to understand what's going on, because mental health is on the rise. And I think we live in a very polarised society. There's a lot of anger online. There's a lot of hate. And I think with that comes judgment about who you are, what you believe. And I think rather than trying to understand and listen, we end up just shouting. And that I think pushes people sometimes into very dark places, because they feel like it affects their character very deep into who they are and what they stand for, and questions their very soul to an extent. And I think that's unhelpful and corrosive on our society. I think we need to be more listening, more understanding, and the government has a real role to play in terms of trying to reduce those rates, because, like I said, I don't want anyone to have to go through that. It's horrible.
No, nobody does. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to end this interview on a happier note. This year, you become a dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a beautiful baby girl in April of this year. Do you do your fair share of the baby care?
I do try to. I think if you ask my wife this question, she would say no. But I am trying to be a good dad. I think that's the challenge. I mean, this job is quite strange because you spend a lot of your time on the M4 or on the GWR service going west. So trying to spend that quality time with my daughter and my wife is sometimes quite challenging. So I need to do better as a dad, I think, is the honest answer. Room to improve would be my report.
Mrs. Tufnell will be hearing those words.
Miss Rewington Pounder.
A lovely name, just to end where we started about how posh you are.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Henry Tufnell, it's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.